Hello, everyone. Welcome to our virtual Q&A for National Geographic series on Hulu, Genius ARETHA. My name is Chris Lemaire, and I'm a programmer at the American Cinematheque. I'm so happy to present this conversation with the series director, executive producer, Anthony Hemingway, and the two stars of the series, Cynthia Erivo and Courtney B. Vance. Our moderator for today is Alex Cohen, who is a journalist and host of Inside the Issues on Spectrum News. And as we get started, I'd just like to send a thank you to our partners, National Geographic, for allowing us to host this conversation and all the Q&As in our 2021 National Geographic Spotlight. Now, let's turn it over to Alex and welcome our guests.
Hey, everybody. I'm Alex Cohen. It's such a thrill and such an honor to be able to moderate this panel today. And I got to say, just hearing Chain of Fools again, in that I wanted to start off with a musical question to all three of our guests today. Prior to working on this project, if you could name one ARETHA song and what it meant to you at a certain point in your life prior to doing this, what would that song be? What place did it hold in your heart? And Cynthia, maybe we'll start with you.
I would go with Ain't No Way. I sing it a lot. And I guess I'm smitten for a love story, a love song. And I feel like this is one of the most beautiful, most painful love songs ever written. And I think that it just sort of taught me how to tell a story. When I learned to sing it, and I think that's something that ARETHA does very specially, very specifically, and I think this is sort of like the epitome of how she does it. Yeah.
Courtney, how about you?
Dr. Feelgood. My mother passed away of ALS about 4 years ago, and when we would take her to the doctor's office for her checkups and things, we would put it on speaker and play that as we rolled in and as we rolled out. So that's my song.
Yeah, I'm sorry for your loss, but I can definitely see how that would stick with you for a long time. And Anthony, how about you? I'm sure you've been listening to a lot of ARETHA music lately, but before all of this, a song that really stood out to you.
Rocksteady was my jam. It feels good. It's celebratory. It makes you want to dance. It embodies, I think, part of the essence of ARETHA that we got to learn about in working on the show. You know, she loved life, she celebrated life, and she loved love. And so it does champion, I think, the times that she was living and why she wrote the song. But it also is to me, it speaks for celebration.
Yeah. And I would like to hear from all three of you too. One of the things that I find so fascinating about these genius projects is that, there's a million ways that you can tell the story of someone's life, but this filter of genius, I think, is very specific. And in my mind, genius is, it could be someone who's super smart. It can be someone who's super talented. It can be a little of both and then some. I'm curious what this perspective or lens of genius in looking at ARETHA's life meant to you. And Anthony, maybe you want to pick it up from there?
Yeah, it means a lot. I think just one, from the perspective of understanding and unpacking, or really kind of redefining not only what it means to be a genius, but just how we look at celebrities, how we forget that they're human first. And I think the idea of understanding someone's, you don't know what it's like to walk in someone's shoes until you actually walk in them. And so it's so easy to stand back and I think pass judgment or create your own perception or your own narrative about someone or someone's life until you actually empathize and understand what it was like and what they were going through. And so I think it reminds me to really kind of live in the present and not try to get too far ahead of where I am, even though we dream and we have, ideas and goals that we pursue and we want to conquer, but it reminds you to live in the now.
I love what you said just there about what it's like to really walk in someone's shoes. And Cynthia, having now walked a lot in ARETHA's shoes. It's another thing that I love about the Genius Project. It's not just like an hour and a half or two hours where you have to be so critical about which moments you get. This really has time to breathe. What was that like for you? What did you learn about Aretha that maybe you had no idea about before?
I mean, I learned a lot. I think what I learned the most about her was how resilient she was, how much staying power she had. I think often we forget that this was a woman who became a mother at the age of 12, and then again at the age of 14, and still somehow managed to find space for who she was meant to become outside of that, which is something that I was discovering through that, and how that also meant that she had to figure out who she was, not just as a musician, but as a woman, in order to become the artist that we know and love today. What I learned about her was that I think sometimes we expect people who are in the public eye to be perfect all the time. And I think that we get to take that away from her, the perfection. Aretha was not perfect. She was a human being who was trying to figure it out day by day by day, who had fear, who had wants, who had desires. And in the end was a woman who wanted to succeed and do music, who loved music. I guess I learned about the heartbreak she went through when she lost her father. I didn't know how desperately sad that was. I didn't know that she had waited and held on for 5 years. She wanted her daddy. She wanted her dad to be there. This was a very complex, complicated woman who was unlike any other musician ever. And it was quite an honor to be able to be a vessel to tell that story.
Yeah. You did so beautifully.
Thank
and
you.
Speaking of complicated characters, Courtney, Vance, C.L. Franklin, I mean, even in that first episode, we see so much of the range of who he was as a human being, and kind of the best of it and the worst of it simultaneously. What was your approach in taking on this role of Aretha's dad?
No, I don't think it's any approach any different than any other, because we're all a lot of good and a lot of bad and a lot of in between. And the idea of if you just keep on living, yeah, I messed up, but just keep on living. That's and to me that's the genius of Cynthia, of Courtney, of Anthony, of CL, of Aretha, of Alex. It's just, ooh, got it. Now I got it. And I'm back. So, just don't give up. Just keep going. Yeah. I know it don't look good now. I know. But just when you just think about our people, and collectively all of our people, and how I can't imagine how our grandparents and great grandparents and great great grandparents, not able to see any light, kept going. Mm-hmm. So I think about CL and the messiness of CL, and then I think about when I think about his stepdaddy, mm-hmm. and what his stepmother and his mother and his grandmother and what they had to endure, I go, okay, yeah, he was messy. Okay, but that's the residual of the Great Migration. So our people are messy. Our people are, but we keep going, and that's, to me, is the message of Aretha that she got from her daddy. And as Troy Maxon says in Fences, or Rose says in the play Fences, you got to take the best of what's in somebody. That's all you got to make away with. She took the best of what was in her daddy, and the testament to that is that she was sitting at his bedside for 5 years for a man to wake up.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Cynthia, there were two things that I read about your performance that just fascinated me that I was hoping you could share with our audience today in terms of really trying to understand who Aretha was, and not, of course, just one point in time, but how she evolved. And one was watching her in interviews
Yes.
and seeing the evolution of the real life Aretha there. Other one was smell. I'm a big smell person too. And I'm just, if you could talk about those two things, how you used the real life Aretha interviews and your sense of smell to kind of unlock this character, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, so I loved watching Aretha's interviews as they sort of passed through time. So because I sort of watched a progression of a person, how confident she was, how soft-spoken she would be at the beginning, and how sort of lilting she would, like the questions and answers that she would give, and how much time she would give to an answer, and how big or small she would be. And what I noticed is that as the years went by, she got bigger, she got more expressive, she had more fun with it. There's an interview in the 80s where she's, I think, in her house, and she's sort of playing piano, and she gets the interviewer to sing with her, and she's laughing, she cooks, and it's just sort of vivacious. But then you rewind to something from the 70s, and it's an interview where she's asked about Sparkle, and it's sort of like the shortest answer you can give. He asks if she's in Sparkle, and she says, well, I would have liked to be. That's the end of the answer. And it sort of changes as it goes on. And I was just fascinated by how she sort of becomes as the years go on, and how it sort of changes. And the sense of smell is something that I've always sort of attached to each person I play. I feel like our senses are the things that unlock memories and unlock feelings. And when I can attach a smell to a person, it makes me think of them. It sort of helps me kickstart the system to be them. Each of my characters have a particular smell that I wear, or one or two particular smells that I go between, but it reminds me of who I'm playing almost when I smell them. Yeah.
And sadly, we can't do like the John Waters smell-o-vision. So can
Right.
you describe the smell of Aretha that helped you kind of tune into her?
For her, for some reason, it was always like it's like a sweet and deep. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If I was to describe the material to you, it would be like a velvet. She's mm-hmm. like sweet and deep, because there's not it. She can be testy if she needed to be, but there's like an innate sweetness that she has, which is sometimes covered, but then it sort of like shows up again. And that's sort of how I feel. And I also feel like her voice is like, there's a sweetness in it as well. So I found like I was wearing I think it's like Tonk and Myrrh, Joe Malone, which is that sort of like mix of that. Yeah.
I can smell it. Yeah. Anthony, one of the things that I really love about this project, having been a fan of Aretha's music for so long, was really seeing it deconstructed, and those scenes of watching Aretha's process and how she worked. Can you talk about, as a creative maker yourself, what you wanted to bring to that side of Aretha's music? You know, what was going on before that finished product that we might hear in concert or on an album?
Yeah, it was a process that was definitely not easy to figure out. As complicated as Aretha is, her life, as special as she is, as artful as she is, she's a magician, and she changed in so many different forms. And so I wanted a visual experience that honored that celebrated that, and supported it in every way, you know, being artful, and detailed in a lot of ways. And I think just trying to, as you know, we discovered the story we were telling, and breaking that down and knowing how nonlinear it was, you know, that was the other challenge of trying to make sure that the visual experience wasn't distracting. It only allowed you to, you know, hopefully be a part of the journey, and not removed. And so looking at and thinking about her life from a child, all the way through till, you know, just beyond even the timeline that we told in the story. Thinking about that life and just looking at that evolution, and knowing that even as we are, you know, I think about myself and finding those relatable touch points also. Her foundation was rock solid. You know, I think something that was connected to everything that she did. She always, you know, went back to that foundation at any point, you know, wherever she I think approached fear, she went back to that foundation to find her strength. And so looking at that, and when we finally kind of cracked it, I saw it as the closest thing that came to me in the moment was, this is Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, you know, and so her opening the door and going in. And so I wanted to give this journey, you know, somewhat of a canvas that really supported her in the most beautiful way. And so once we learned that we were, you know, showing her first solo performance in church at 13 years old, that was a moment where I kind of started to, that was my entry point. And from there, I is, you know, how and what black and white does to you. We chose black and white for the years prior to that. And it would give, you know, what that did was it gave us the opportunity to represent and express her in such a beautiful way using color, and how color makes you feel. It's subjective, but it also, you know, has an ability to make you, and that was what we wanted the viewer to be able to come in. We're not coming with our own point of view. We wanted the viewers to take from it, you know, what they perceived it to be, you know, but to experience her life for the greatest times that she had. And so that's where it all came from. And so really trying to create that recipe was fun. It was challenging because of our jumping around in the narrative. But it was fun, especially as we got to the later parts of her years in her life, where she really found her strength. She, you know, started to really own her story and her narrative, and stand on her own, and really kind of become the captain of her own story. And so it became more colorful and more vibrant and more alive. And so that was really the recipe where, you know, I had to jump into a whole pot of gumbo and figure out all those little, you know, special tastes, as Cynthia does. Like, you know, it's the same thing in my own process of just finding those things that really define each turn and each moment, that just supports all the beautiful work that they do.
I love your Wizard of Oz analogy, which I think is fitting in a number of ways. And not only that, you know, the black and white to the color transformation, but the Wizard of Oz is right. Dorothy's the hero, Dorothy's the protagonist, but she cannot have her journey without the guys who are surrounding her. And you see that in all the different men in Aretha's life. Courtney, we just saw a clip there in the trailer where, you know, it is more difficult to be the man attending to the queen than the woman attending to the king. Courtney, how did this film have you feeling about being someone in that immediate circle, that entourage around the superstar, especially as the maybe the gender dynamics come into play?
Well, first of all, I love your transitions. Your transitions are very good, Miss Alex.
Thank you.
But I just think it, you know, I really tap into transitions in life, and how, as you know, CL was a superstar in the civil rights movement, and in the community at large, and in the gospel world. He was a superstar. He was a superstar to his family, he was a superstar to his church, a superstar to the community. And how do you transition from being a superstar to raising a superstar, and then having a superstar ascend? And she must rise and I must diminish. That's the way it's supposed to. As a parent, that's the way it's supposed to go. And you know, the relationship was very complex, because I remember the scene where we were, you know, talking to them about the Martin Luther King march. We're gonna have the march I'm gonna have, and King is going. And they were about to play me, and I said, wait a minute, you wouldn't have nothing if I didn't give you no money, and if I wasn't doing. And that's when I realized, I think, and something shifted in the relationship, that I had to go, got it. And you know, it's the same relationship that Tiger Woods and his daddy, and we're watching it. We're watching as you know, it's very public, the transition, and it's as their transition was, as their life was. And I challenge anybody to live out their lives in public, and not there not be a high cost to that high living. Mm-hmm. There was a high cost for the two of them, mm-hmm. and for the family, mm-hmm. for that to play out, you know, and nobody knows what the family went through, and they'll never know, because they were very
Hi.
They were very insular about themselves, and they closed ranks quicker than anybody I know. So you only can get a titch, and whatever you're going to surmise about it, you go ahead and surmise about it, but we're not giving you no food to that fodder. So that to me is interesting, how the two of them and the dynamics within the family, the siblings, and how they all knew that I lifted her up above them. And but they like, well, we know she's wonderful, Dad, but can I go too? I mean, it's just, you know, it's just seeing those dynamics, and Anthony helping us, you know, just craft those. It's just, you know, how it plays out, and how the pain in them, and they all died of cancer of some way, you know. I mean, so what does that mean, you know? the 4 children, you know, it's just
sad.
That's very sad. I feel like another big theme in this project is this notion of ownership, right? And ARETHA's ownership. And I think it's really fascinating, Cynthia, as you in real life, you've got this production company, Edith's daughter, you've got your own music career. I wonder, when you inhabit ARETHA's soul like this, if there are takeaway lessons for you as you now face, you know, your whole life ahead of you, and the projects that you have and what you choose to do. Do you learn lessons about ownership from ARETHA?
Yes, and I think the main and biggest lesson that I've learned from inhabiting ARETHA is the lack of fear. That we may have the fear of asking, but it is not useful when you have to move forward. The fact is, you can't be as sometimes you just cannot be as creative as you want to be if you don't have any ownership in it, especially when it's something like music. If you are the writer, which I am, and you are the person who helps to create the music, if you have no ownership over it, then it's sort of like erasing the work that you've already done in the first place, and now it becomes someone else. It's like, there's there's a scene in Singing in the Rain where our main protagonist, our leading lady, is singing behind the curtain as someone else. And until the curtain is pulled back, nobody knows it's her. Nobody knows that that's her work. And the most important thing is that is the work that comes forward, and that's the work that people are celebrating. But if there's another face on it and someone else is in front, then that is the person who is perceived to be the person doing the work. And that's partly what ownership is about. It's to be able to own the work that you're doing, so that you can also join in the celebration of the work that gets done. And I think she understood that. I think that she understood that in the work that she had done, the hard work that she put forward, she deserved to have the ownership of it. And I think I have just, in playing her, have learned, and over the years have learned, that it's okay for women to own the work that they put forward. And it's also the easiest way to be able to create. If you're, now I'm starting this production company. Before that, I couldn't decide what I was doing. I couldn't decide what I could put forward. I couldn't make space for other actors. I couldn't make space for other performers, for DPs, for new directors. But now, because this is my company, I can decide what work goes forward, and I can bring people along. And that's really what ownership is about, is being able to decide who gets to take this journey with you as well, when otherwise those decisions would be made for you. So yeah.
And it's really beautiful to see what the cost of that was.
Yeah.
The cost of her getting to that place.
Yeah.
7, 8 years in New York, and she didn't give up. Can you imagine if she had given up and, after 4 years or 3 years or 7 or 6 years and gone back to the church, and you had never heard of her again. But, because of her resiliency, because of what she knew in her spirit, she kept going. So that's a wonderful message from the movie as well.
And of course, whenever it comes to chronicling someone's life and someone's work, there's the kind of traditional documentary style way of doing things. And then there's this narrative cinematic approach. Anthony, I'd love to hear from you because, so much of your work has been bringing real chapters of our collective history to life in this cinematic way. What have you learned along the way for doing that? How can you best make that happen? And what role do these kinds of pieces have for us as an audience? How is this Genius Aretha maybe different from an Aretha documentary?
I think personally, it continues to encourage and inspire me to live my authentic self, to live my truth, and not to not be afraid. What Cynthia was saying is a saying that I have heard and love, which is, everything that's purposed for you or things that you even want is right on the other side of fear. And if you don't take the risk or find the strength to go after it, you'll never know, or you'll, and that's the thing, that what Aretha's journey in her life so beautifully showed us, which was, she wasn't afraid to fail. It was just about, if you do fail or if you fall, get back up and keep pushing. And so that was, again, just to translate that into a visual style. It was about being kinetic and visceral and having an experience that was intimate. We put the camera 2 feet from people. Cynthia will tell you, we get all up in her eyes. But that's the ability for that language and that treatment to, translate it, to allow you in, and to be a part of it. And to, she's allowing us through this story to come into her humanity and to learn. And we just had the blessing of being able to share it.
Yeah. Cynthia, I am wondering, I'm going to give a little shameless plug for you because you've got a concert. For those watching here in Southern California, you've got a concert coming up at the Hollywood Bowl. You are also a singer in your own right. We just have a few minutes left, but I would love to hear, because Aretha's voice is so very unique, and I'm sure it must have been a little daunting taking on this role, thinking, oh my God, I got to sing Aretha. How you approach that, and how learning about Aretha's voice might influence Cynthia Erivo's voice as a musician going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I spent so long listening to her songs, listening to her music, and I am a self-professed music geek. So for me, it was thrilling. I would sit with my vocal coach and we would listen to each song and just break it down bit by bit by bit by bit, just to hear the decisions she would make. One of my favorite songs to sing was You're All I Need to Get By, because I had heard so many versions of it, and then hearing her version was very specific to her. There's the, like a sweet morning dew, I took one look at you, and it was plain to see you were my destiny. She just, something completely different. She does like a sweet morning dew, I took one look at you, and it was plain to see you were my destiny. Why would you choose that note to finish on? Why? Well, because now I understand that the word destiny is important. you know, and it's what I would do with all of the music, just trying to find reasons, trying to understand the story she's trying to tell, trying to understand where she's coming from. And there's something so vulnerable in the way she sings that particular thing, because now it's sort of, we don't know where her voice is going to go. So it really is sort of like freeform conversation almost. And that's sort of what I learned for myself, that you can go with something in the moment. I imagine that's what she was doing a lot. You'll hear a live performance and hear a recorded performance of something. They're never the same. No one performance of Aretha's is ever the same. That's something that I learned as I was listening to her. The same song could be sung 5 different times by her, and they would be sung 5 different ways. It would just be how she felt on the day, in the moment. She would hold something, hold a breath and wait. She'd wait and pull back on a note. She would back phrase on something and before she would rush forward again. And it's just about heart and feeling. And if you start from that place, then you can communicate the way she communicates. Then you can communicate the meaning of something. You can communicate the song and the music. And hopefully that's what I will be doing. Yeah.
And my evil plan worked. I got you to sing a little bit for us because it's such a treat. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for this particular event, but the project is Genius Aretha on National Geographic. It's so phenomenal, so please go watch the whole thing if you haven't already. My sincere thanks to Cynthia Erivo, Courtney B. Vance, and to Anthony Hemingway, and of course to the American Cinematheque. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex. Echoing what you just said, thank you so much to our 3 guests here. This was such an honor to have you all to dive into this series. To our audience, if you haven't seen the series yet, it's all streaming, the full series on Hulu, so please seek it out. And thank you again. Have a great day, everyone.